What's up, everybody? This is Tech G back with another video to help you successfully pass the CompTIA A+ 1202 certification exam. So let's get into it. You got your sights set on becoming a certified IT professional, and the CompTIA 1202 exam is standing between you and that shiny new certification. And one of the key objectives that you're going to need to master is how to perform operating system installations and upgrades in a variety of situations. So now that might sound simple, meaning you just pop in the disk and click install. But in the real world, operating system installs are an art form. There are different boot methods, installation types, partition styles, drive formats, and upgrade considerations that you have to think about, plus modern IT environments that use everything from network-based deployments to zero-touch installations. So you will need to be ready for any scenario. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get through all of this wonderful information. All right, so we're going to start off talking about boot methods. So when we talk about installing or upgrading an operating system, the very first step is booting into the installer. There are quite a few ways to do that. First one is the USB boot. And this is the go-to method for most modern installations. So basically you take a USB flash drive, you load it with the operating system installer using tools like Rufus or the Windows Media Creation tool. You change your computer's boot order in the BIOS or UEFI so it boots from the USB first, and then boom, your system loads into the installation environment. Now, as a tip, you always want to double check that the USB drive is formatted correctly using FAT32 for compatibility, and you want to keep a bootable installer in your IT toolkit because it can save you in emergencies. The next boot method is called a network boot or a PXE boot, and that stands for pre-boot execution environment. And this lets a computer boot from a network server instead of local media. And this is used a lot in enterprise environments for mass deployments. You need a PXE-enabled NIC or a network interface card and a properly configured PXE server. And basically, the server sends the installation files to the client machine over the network. Now, when it comes to a real-world scenario, just imagine that you're setting up 100 new Office PCs. Instead of you manually inserting USB drives into each one of them, you would use a PXE boot to push the operating system remotely. All right, so the next method is the solid state or flash drive boot. So sometimes you'll have an external SSD or a specialized flash drive with an operating system image, and this is faster than traditional USB sticks. And this is great for technicians who carry a quote-unquote Swiss Army knife operating system installer drive. You also have what is called the internet-based boot. Now, some modern systems like Chromebook, they can install their operating systems over the internet. They don't use any USBs or no CDs. It's just a straight Wi-Fi connection. And this is usually used for devices with minimal local storage. Now, as an exam tip, just remember that internet-based installs, they are common in lightweight devices or thin clients. Then you also have what is called the external or hot swappable drive boot. And this is basically where you can connect an external hard drive via USB or Thunderbolt and boot to the operating system installer from there. And this is useful for large installation files that won't fit on a small flash drive. And hot swappable, this basically means that you can plug and unplug things without shutting down the system if it is supported. Another boot method is the internal hard drive partition boot. So sometimes the installer is already stored on a hidden partition inside the computer, and this is common in factory recovery setups. So there is no need for external media. You just trigger the recovery tool by pressing F11 on boot. And then you have what is called the multi-boot. So if you've ever seen someone run Windows and Linux on the same machine, that's multi-boot. And basically you set up multiple partitions, each with its own operating system. And the bootloader, it lets you choose which operating system to run when the computer starts. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the types of installations. So once you've chosen your boot method, it's now time to decide what type of installation you're going to do. And the first one we have is called a clean install. And this is the wipe it and start fresh method. And basically it erases all data on the drive. It installs the operating system from scratch, and it gives you the most stable junk-free system possible. And when would you use this? Well, you would use this when a machine is slow, infected, or cluttered beyond repair, or when you're setting up a brand new PC. You have what is called an upgrade. And this keeps your user files, your settings, and applications intact while replacing the old operating system with a new version. And basically, this is faster than a clean install, and it has less disruption for the user. Now, as a word of caution, if the old operating system has problems, then upgrading it might carry those problems into the new installation. You also have what is called an image deployment. So an image, this is a snapshot of a fully installed and configured operating system with applications and settings. And basically you clone this image onto other machines, and this can save you hours compared to installing each system manually. And you will commonly find this used in corporate rollouts, school labs, and in call centers. You also have what is called a remote network installation. This is similar to a Pixie boot, but it may use different tools or platforms. And basically this lets you install an operating system over the network without touching the device physically. You also have what is called a zero touch deployment, and this is the holy grail of automation. And basically devices, they connect to the network, authenticate, and automatically install everything they need without an IT tech lifting a finger. And tools like Microsoft Endpoint Manager or Intune, they make all of this possible. Then there's a recovery partition, and basically this is a hidden partition on the hard drive that stores a recovery image, and it lets you reinstall or reset the operating system without external media, and this is common in consumer laptops. You also have what is called a repair installation. So instead of starting over, you can repair the operating system in place, and this lets you keep your data intact. It replaces damaged or missing system files, and this is useful for fixing boot problems or corrupted files. And then you also have third-party driver considerations. So some hardware needs special drivers during installation, like RAID controllers or custom network adapters, because without them, the operating system might not detect the hardware. So you always want to keep these drivers on a USB stick in your kit. All right, next let's talk about partitioning. So partitioning, this is deciding how your storage will be split up. So you could think of it as creating sections on the drive for different purposes. And the first type of partition is called GPT or GUID partition table, and this supports large drives over 2 terabytes. And this can have more than 4 partitions. And this is required for UEFI systems. You have what is called MBR, or the master boot record. This is the older standard. It is limited to 2 terabyte drives. And this can only have up to 4 partitions, or 3 primary ones and 1 extended. Now, as some real world advice, you want to use GPT unless you're working with older hardware that requires MBR. All right, next let's talk about drive formats. So formatting, this prepares the partition so the operating system can store files. And some common file systems are NTFS, and this is standard for Windows. You got FAT32, this is good for compatibility, but is limited to 4 gigabyte file sizes. You got exFAT, this is good for flash drives and large files. And you got ext4, this is common in Linux. Now, as a pro tip, you always want to match the file system to the operating system requirements. We also have some upgrade considerations. So before upgrading, you need to ask yourself, have you backed up your user files and preferences? Because you always want to back up before you do anything risky. And also you want to use cloud storage or external drives during a backup. Another thing you need to ask yourself is, will existing applications and drivers work? So you want to check your compatibility list, because sometimes you need updated drivers after you do an upgrade. And another question is the hardware compatible? Because an old machine might not meet the new operating system requirements. So these are some things you need to think about when you're doing an upgrade. All right, next we have feature updates. So modern operating systems like Windows 10 or 11, but mostly Windows 11 because Windows 10 is not supported anymore, they don't just get security patches. They get feature updates that can change functionality, and large updates that can take hours and they can require restarts. You have what is called a product life cycle. So every operating system has a birth date or the release date, and a support period, and an end of life date. And once an operating system is out of support, then there are no more updates, meaning you're going to be vulnerable to security risks. All right, so let's go over a real world scenario. So let's say that your boss comes to you and says, we got 25 laptops for our new hires. They all need Windows 11 Pro installed, company apps loaded, and user accounts ready to go by Monday. So here's how you would approach this. First, you're going to choose the boot method. You're going to choose a Pixie boot or an image deployment to save you some time. Then you're going to choose your type of installation. So you're going to choose an image deployment for consistency. Next, you're going to choose how to partition this thing. So you're going to use GPT or UEFI, because this offers 1 partition for the operating system and 1 for recovery. You're also going to choose your drive format. So you're going to use NTFS for Windows. So you're going to load your network and hardware drivers into the image. And then you're going to do a post install where you're going to apply feature updates, join to the domain, and test functionality. And by Monday morning, those laptops will be ready to hand out, and you will be the hero. All right, so let me go ahead and wrap all this up. So installing and upgrading operating systems, this isn't just about clicking install. It's about choosing the right method for the job, planning ahead for compatibility, and ensuring the system is stable and secure afterward. So if you're aiming for your CompTIA A+ 1202 exam, you need to know the following. You need to know your boot methods. We're talking about USB, network, recovery partitions, multi-boot, etc. You need to know your installation types. You got your clean install, your upgrade, your image deployment, and your repair. You need to know about partition styles. So you got GPT versus MBR. You need to know about upgrade preparation in terms of backups, compatibility checks, and drivers. And you also need to know about life cycle awareness. Basically means you need to know when the support ends. And when you master this, you won't just pass the test. You'll walk into your first IT role ready to handle any operating system install challenge that will be thrown your way. All right, so now that we got that out of the way, let's do some check on learning. So our first question is, which of the following is the most appropriate partition style to use when installing Windows 11 on a modern computer with a 4 terabyte hard drive and UEFI firmware? Would this be MBR, GPT, FAT32 partition, or exFAT partition? And the correct answer is GPT, or GUID partition table. So GPT, this supports large drives over 2 terabytes and is required for systems using UEFI firmware. MBR, this is an older standard that only supports up to 2 terabytes and is more limited. FAT32 and exFAT, these are file systems and not partition styles, and they would not be chosen at this stage of the operating system setup. Next question. You are tasked with installing Windows 10 on 50 laptops for a company. The IT manager wants all systems set up identically with the operating system, drivers, and company applications already configured. Which installation method will be the most efficient? Would this be a clean install, an image deployment, a repair installation, or an upgrade? The correct answer is an image deployment. So an image deployment, this lets you install a pre-configured operating system and software setup to multiple machines quickly, ensuring all systems are identical. Clean installs, they require setting up each computer individually from scratch. Repair installations, these are for fixing existing operating system issues, not setting up new machines. And upgrades, they keep existing files and applications and move to a newer operating system, which is not the case here. And our final question is, before performing an operating system upgrade, which of the following should you do first to prevent data loss? Should you format the hard drive, check for feature updates, back up user files and preferences, or install third-party drivers? And the correct answer is you want to back up user files and preferences. So always back up user data before an operating system upgrade in case something goes wrong during installation. Formatting the hard drive, this is going to erase data, and this is not something that you would do before an upgrade. And checking for feature updates and installing drivers are important, but they come later in the process.